Imagine this. You're walking down a street you've walked 100 times before. Same stores, same faces, same sound of shoes on pavement, same dull sky overhead. You pass the cafe where you once dreamt of writing your book. You glance at the gym where you paid a year's membership and showed up for 2 weeks. You scroll past someone's vacation photos online and for a flicker of a moment feel something that tastes like envy, but it disappears before you can name it. And then like a bolt of lightning behind your ribs, a thought hits you. Is this it? Not in a dramatic movie scene way. More like a whisper, a quiet panic, a subtle itch beneath the skin of your daily life. You get home, drop your bag, sit on your bed and check your phone for the 100th time. Messages, memes, meaningless chatter. You laugh, but something inside you doesn't. You go to sleep. You wake up, you do it again, but something in you is growing restless. Some unnameable pressure under the surface, like a trapped animal clawing from the inside of your chest. What if you're not actually living your life but merely occupying it? Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." But what if that's exactly what you're doing? Not out of malice or laziness, but out of habit, out of survival. Because here's the paradox no one talks about. You can be alive and still be wasting your life. You can have a job, a house, a schedule, a list of things to do, and yet be completely detached from yourself. You can chase achievements, collect experiences, smile in photos, while something essential in you remains untouched, unseen, unlived. What if your deepest self, the part that dreams, creates, desires, aches, is still waiting to be born? What if the version of you you've been feeding is just a well-trained ghost, an echo designed to fit in, to keep moving, to not ask dangerous questions? And here's the truly unsettling part. What if wasting your life doesn't look like failure, but comfort? Not falling apart, but staying together too well. Not chaos, but routine. Not despair, but numbness. We imagine a wasted life as something loud, full of addictions, loss, collapse. But what if it's silent? What if it feels normal, expected, respected? What if wasting your life is checking every box, except the one that belongs to your soul? Think about it. You're busy, productive even. You're doing well. But when was the last time you felt awe? Not entertainment, not distraction, awe. The soul-level tremor that tells you you're in the presence of something real, something alive. When was the last time you asked yourself what you actually want, not what you should want, or what others expect, or what looks good on paper? Have you ever noticed how much of your life is scripted? How often you say yes when you mean no? How many dreams you've delayed until some imaginary later that never arrives? Do you ever get the sense that you were meant for something more, but can't quite articulate what that more is? And here's the quiet terror of it all. Life doesn't warn you when you're wasting it. It rewards you, with likes, with paychecks, with polite smiles. It numbs you just enough to keep you from noticing the slow, invisible erosion of your soul. And you, intelligent, curious, vibrant you, might be trading your essence for a life that's merely safe. Carl Jung believed that the greatest tragedy of the modern individual is not that they suffer, but that they are disconnected from the self. That deep buried core of meaning that speaks in dreams, art, symbols, desires. He called it the individuation process, the journey to become whole, not by adding more, but by uncovering what has always been buried within. But most never begin that journey. Why? Because facing your soul means facing everything you've avoided, every lie you've told yourself, every role you've played, every compromise you've accepted in the name of comfort, belonging, or fear. So the real question is not, are you alive? But rather, are you living the life that belongs to you? Or are you just renting space in a reality designed by others? The scariest part? There may not be a clear sign. No one will scream that you're off course. The lights won't flicker. The ground won't shake. Wasting your life feels eerily quiet. A slow leak, a silent drift, a polite smile in the mirror that never reaches your eyes. So now the question burns. How did we get here? Why do so many of us feel this way beneath the surface? What hidden forces have pulled us into this quiet sleepwalking? What if this isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility? And if so, is there a way back? A way out? Let's go deeper. There is a strange and terrible irony to modern life. We have more freedom than any generation before us, more access to knowledge, comfort, and choice, and yet we are more lost, anxious, and fragmented than ever. Why? Because something invisible has been guiding us. A quiet architecture built into the walls of society, the wiring of our minds, and the roles we were taught to play long before we understood we were even playing them. Carl Jung didn't believe that people simply drift into meaninglessness by accident. He believed it happens because we unconsciously follow false gods, things that feel real but hollow us out over time. Money, status, achievement, applause, control. Each of these is a modern idol, a mask that looks like purpose but is merely performance. From a young age, you were trained, like all of us, to identify with the persona, the mask you wear to be liked, respected, accepted, the good student, the high achiever, the obedient worker, the charming friend. You were taught to silence what doesn't fit, to banish the unruly parts of yourself, the anger, the desire, the dreams that don't align with realistic goals. Those fragments didn't disappear. They became your shadow, the parts of you exiled into the unconscious, whispering behind the walls of your life. Jung wrote that the great task of the individual is to reunite with the shadow, not to become it, but to integrate it, to stop living half a life, to become whole. But most of us never do. Why? Because facing the shadow means facing the pain of who we are without the mask, and that is terrifying. So instead, we do what society rewards. We chase external validation. We collect shiny distractions. We numb ourselves with noise. But here's the deeper problem, one that thinkers like Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, and Sartre also warned us about. We mistake activity for meaning. In the modern world, busyness has become a virtue. If you're always working, always moving, always on your grind, then you must be doing something right. Because underneath all this movement is a quiet question we refuse to answer. Why am I doing any of this at all? Nietzsche called this the problem of nihilism, the collapse of shared values, the death of higher meaning, the loss of any transcendent goal. Once religion, myth, and spiritual purpose lost their grip, we were left with a vacuum. And in that vacuum, we filled the space with consumption. Consumption of entertainment, consumption of products, consumption of experiences, even consumption of self, your body, your brand, your identity as a marketable object. In Brave New World, Aldous Huxley predicted a dystopia, not of oppression, but of pleasure. A world where people no longer needed to be controlled by fear, because they would willingly distract themselves into docility. A population drugged by comfort, numbed by stimulation, and convinced they were free simply because they could choose between endless versions of the same thing. Sound familiar? You see, the problem isn't that life has no meaning. The problem is that we're too distracted to notice it. Meaning doesn't scream. It doesn't knock down your door. It whispers. And if your mind is flooded with dopamine, notifications, and performance anxiety, you'll never hear it. Jung saw this coming. He believed that the modern world had become hostile to the soul. In a society obsessed with rationality, science, and outward success, there was no room left for the symbolic, the sacred, the unconscious. The very parts of us that give life its texture and mystery were now dismissed as irrational, primitive, or useless. But without them, without myth, dream, depth, and symbol, we become spiritually starved. You may not be physically hungry, but your soul might be. Here's the tragedy. Most people don't even realize they're hungry, because the world keeps feeding them processed identity, safe goals, pre-packaged desires, lifestyles that look good in pictures but taste like ash in your mouth after a while. And so we drift. We become existentially malnourished, depressed without knowing why, anxious without knowing what we fear, restless in a life that looks fine on paper. And here's where things get darker. The longer you ignore this hunger, the more it turns on you. You begin to self-sabotage. You procrastinate. You overconsume. You develop strange symptoms. Your body rebels. Your dreams grow chaotic. Your relationships lose spark. Why? Because your deeper self is trying to wake you up. Jung called this the numinous experience, the moment something irrational and powerful rises from within, shaking the foundation of your identity. A dream that disturbs you. A crisis that cracks your routine. A depression that refuses to be medicated away. These are not signs of weakness. They are invitations. Invitations to begin the journey back to yourself. But first, you must stop running. Stop running from boredom with noise. Stop running from fear with work. Stop running from truth with busyness. You must dare to ask the most dangerous question. What if the life I've built is not truly mine? And what if the only way forward is to tear it down? Not recklessly, not destructively, but honestly. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and existential psychiatrist, wrote that life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. Meaning is not found by doing more, it is found by doing what matters. But to know what matters, you must know who you are beneath the roles. And that is the hardest journey you will ever take. The journey inward, the rebellion against performance, the confrontation with the unlived life. But before you can change anything, you must first see it. You must see what this hidden disease of distraction and identity fragmentation has already done. You must look around not just at the world but at yourself, and ask, what has this cost me already? What parts of you have died while you were busy trying to be acceptable? What dreams have you buried beneath practicality? What voice inside you have you silenced so well you forgot it ever existed? Because the consequences aren't coming, they're already here. Let's look at them together. You didn't notice it at first. The decay was quiet. It crept in like mold in a locked room, silent, odorless, slow. You kept going through the motions. You told yourself you were fine. Everyone else seemed fine too, after all. But beneath your skin, something began to rot. Not in your flesh, in your sense of self. Because when you live a life disconnected from meaning, purpose doesn't vanish. It mutates. And the mutation is devastating. When the soul starves, it doesn't go quietly. It finds ways to speak, to sabotage, to scream. Let's call it what it is, a spiritual collapse hiding in plain sight. You don't feel it all at once. It begins in small ways. You wake up tired no matter how much sleep you get. You avoid silence, because when it's quiet, the anxiety creeps in. You scroll for hours, not because you're entertained, but because you're afraid of the emptiness that waits in stillness. You call it boredom. You call it burnout. You call it stress, but it's something deeper. It's your unlived life rebelling, and its symptoms are everywhere. Look closer. That creeping sense of meaninglessness you feel at work. That what's the point? Feeling you shoved down with coffee and meetings? That's not just career fatigue. That's the part of you that knows you were meant to create, to build something that actually matters, trying to claw its way to the surface. That impulsive spending, that endless desire to buy the next thing, fix the next flaw, decorate the emptiness. It's not greed. It's a desperate attempt to manufacture a feeling of aliveness, because the things that used to bring you joy now feel hollow. Even relationships suffer. You find yourself numbing in love, present, but not there. You start hiding parts of yourself, afraid they're too much or not enough. You start performing for the person you care about, just like you perform for the world. And slowly, intimacy becomes another stage. Even ambition becomes corrupted. You tell yourself you're striving toward your goals, but secretly you're terrified of what happens if you achieve them. Because what if success doesn't fix the emptiness? What if it exposes it? These are not minor inconveniences. These are the psychic fractures of a life detached from its essence. Carl Jung warned us of this. He said that when the unconscious is not made conscious, it rules your life and you call it fate. You start to believe this is just how life is. You say everyone feels this way. You laugh at the idea of purpose like it's a luxury for poets and philosophers. But here's the brutal truth. The system wants you to feel this way, because a disconnected person is easier to control. You'll buy more, you'll obey more, you'll question less. You'll plug into systems, economic, political, ideological, not because you believe in them, but because they offer structure to your aimlessness. They offer identity when you've forgotten your own. But they also take something from you, quietly, continuously. Every day you ignore your inner voice, a piece of you dies. Not in one dramatic collapse, but like pages fading in a book left out in the sun. Until one day you wake up and realize you're living a story that isn't yours. Speaking lines you don't believe, chasing goals that no longer move you. And then you start to fear that it's too late. That's the scariest consequence of all. Not just the loss of meaning, but the illusion of permanence. The idea that once you've chosen a path, career, marriage, belief system, you're locked in forever. That the life you built, even if it feels suffocating, must be protected. This illusion is the death of growth, because you cannot evolve and cling to comfort. You cannot expand and remain safe. And yet we're conditioned to choose safety, conditioned by a culture that rewards conformity and punishes inner exploration. Here's how it works. Cognitive biases keep you locked in. The status quo bias convinces you that change is risky, even if staying the same is killing you. Iran's social conditioning shames you for wanting something different. You're told to be grateful, not hungry. Neurological addiction to dopamine keeps your brain looped in cycles of consumption instead of contemplation. You're trained to chase hits, not meaning. Cultural scripts tell you how your life should look by a certain age, and if your soul's timeline doesn't match, you assume something's wrong with you. All of it, every subtle manipulation, pushes you further from the truth, that your suffering is a signal, not a defect. A flare from your deeper self screaming, this is not the life we were meant to live. But if you ignore it long enough, it can turn toxic. That's the final unseen consequence. The most dangerous of all, you begin to believe the lie. You start thinking maybe you're just broken. Maybe meaning is a myth. Maybe no one really feels alive. And those who say they do are faking it better than you. You stop searching. You stop asking. You stop fighting. You become what Jung feared most. A person so adapted to the collective noise that they lose all contact with their inner voice. You're not trying to become someone else. You're trying to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. That's the rebellion. And it's terrifying, because the first thing it demands is destruction. You must let things die. Old identities, relationships built on false foundations, goals that once lit you up but now suffocate you. The version of you that fit in, that succeeded, that pleased others while starving yourself. Let them go. Burn the costumes. Tear down the altar to external validation. Mourn the life that could have been so you can finally build the one that was meant to be. But how? Start here, draw the projections. Jung warned that we see the world not as it is, but as we are. The first act of freedom is to reclaim your projections. Stop blaming, stop idolizing, stop seeing others as saviors or villains. See clearly, see truthfully, see yourself. Make space for silence. Stop filling every moment with stimulation. Turn off the noise. Walk without your phone. Sit with your thoughts. Let the discomfort rise and stay. That's where the buried parts of you begin to speak. Reclaim your desires. Not the desires you were taught to have. The raw ones. The ones that scared your teachers. The ones that don't fit the mold. Want what you actually want and be willing to want it fully, even if it threatens the life you've built. Dismantle the shoulds. I should be further along. I should settle down. I should be grateful. Every should is a leash. Cut them. Replace them with truth. I want. I need. I will. Accept the chaos. The road to authenticity is not clean. It's messy. You will feel lost. People will misunderstand you. You might lose friends, jobs, or relationships that were only ever anchored in your false self. Let it all fall away. What's real will remain. And through this chaos, something astonishing happens. You begin to feel alive again. You wake up with questions, not dread. You look in the mirror and recognize the fire in your eyes. You begin to experience moments, not just pass through them. You no longer need everyone to approve, because finally you approve of yourself. You're not free from something. You're free for something. For wonder, for intimacy, for art, for creation, for building a life that pulses with truth, even if it's ugly, even if it's risky, even if it scares everyone around you. Because here's the secret most never realize. Freedom doesn't come from escape. It comes from alignment. When your actions align with your values, when your choices align with your essence, when your life aligns with your soul, you become unstoppable. You don't need motivation, you move from clarity. You don't need to chase approval, you radiate from the inside out. You don't need to impress anyone. You live in a way that expresses the deepest parts of you, boldly, unapologetically, fully. This isn't theory. The greatest figures, the ones who shattered norms, challenged systems, and birthed revolutions, were not the ones who fit in. They were the ones who listened to an inner voice louder than the crowd. Jung, Nietzsche, Frankl, even spiritual mystics, artists, poets, they were all rebels of the inner world, and you can be too. But don't make the mistake of thinking rebellion means recklessness. It doesn't mean abandon your responsibilities or burn everything without reason. It means wake up. It means stop sleepwalking through a life that was never yours. It means find the courage to live with your whole heart, even when the world hands you masks, because that courage is contagious. When one person lives authentically, it gives permission to others. When you refuse to betray yourself, you light a path others didn't know was possible. The rebellion begins with you, but it doesn't end with you. You become a mirror for what's possible, a reminder that there is another way, not easier, but real. And in a world addicted to illusion, real is the rarest, most revolutionary thing of all. So stand up. Not with fists raised, but with your eyes open. No more lies. No more numbness. No more wasted life. The system cannot stop a person who remembers who they are. And now, you're remembering. There is a moment after the chaos, after the unraveling, when everything goes still. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. You wake up one day and realize something radical. There is nothing wrong with you. There never was. The numbness, the ache, the dissatisfaction, the quiet yearning for something more. Those weren't signs of failure. They were signals, whispers from your soul trying to pull you home. And now, you're home. Not in a place, in a truth. A truth that rearranges everything. You were never meant to be normal. You were meant to be whole. There is a difference. Normal is compliance. Wholeness is courage. Normal fits in. Wholeness expands beyond boundaries. Normal seeks approval. Wholeness seeks truth. And the deepest truth, it isn't out there, it's within. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you were trained to be, not who your trauma taught you to be, not who society expects you to be, who you are." That's the final realization. You were never lost, you were only buried. Beneath roles, beneath expectations, beneath years of survival mechanisms that kept you safe but silent. You wore masks so well you forgot you had a face underneath. But the rebellion stripped them away. The pain cracked the shell, and what remains? You, raw, real, radiant, not perfect, not polished, but true. And here's the revelation that shakes the very foundation of how you've seen life until now. The purpose of life is not to become something. It is to remember what you already are. You are not a blank slate. You are a seed. Everything you needed was already planted within you. The curiosity, the wildness, the vision, the tenderness, the fire. You weren't born to be built. You were born to be revealed. And all the striving, all the performing, all the chasing was just a detour. A necessary one, maybe, but a detour nonetheless. The real journey was never outward. It was always inward. That's what Jung meant by individuation. Not self-improvement, not optimization, integration. The acceptance of all that you are. The shadow, the light, the pain, the joy, the genius, the madness, the child, the warrior, all of it, all of you. You are not here to be good. You are here to be whole. And when you live from that place, from wholeness, everything changes. You no longer seek purpose. You become it. You no longer chase love. You embody it. You no longer wait for freedom. You live it. And suddenly the world looks different. Not because it has changed, but because you're finally seeing it through your eyes, not the ones borrowed from culture, parents, fear, or shame. You begin to notice beauty in the smallest things. You cry without needing a reason. You laugh with your whole body. You walk through life awake. And even your suffering starts to look different. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this awakening within me? Pain becomes teacher. Fear becomes compass. Loss becomes opening. You realize that everything has been guiding you here, to this moment, this clarity, this ultimate truth. You are the only one who can live your life. No one else can feel what you feel. No one else can see the world as you see it. No one else can carry your fire, and if you don't live your truth, the world will lose something only you could offer. This is not poetic exaggeration. It's existential fact. There will never be another you. Not in this form, not in this time, not with your mix of flaws, gifts, scars, and vision. So the question is no longer what should I do? It's what do I know in my bones that I cannot ignore anymore? Maybe it's a story you need to write, a boundary you need to set, a place you need to leave, a calling you need to follow. Maybe it's simply the act of slowing down, breathing deep, and finally feeling what you've been running from for years. Whatever it is, honor it. Because the final truth is not about philosophy or theory, it's about radical responsibility. The kind that doesn't wait for permission, the kind that doesn't blame or beg, the kind that says, this is my one wild sacred life, and I will not waste it. Not for comfort, not for approval, not for fear, because now you see, wasting your life doesn't look like failure. It looks like forgetting. Forgetting that you're not here to replicate someone else's dream. You're not here to survive until retirement. You're not here to float numbly through the days, waiting for something to shake you awake. You are here to become fire. To burn so brightly with authenticity that everything false melts in your presence. To live in such truth that others feel brave enough to live theirs. And in doing so, you don't just save yourself, you liberate others, because the soul doesn't speak in words, it speaks in resonance. And when you live a life that rings true, others hear the echo inside themselves. This is your final task, to become what you were always meant to be. Not a version of someone else, not an actor in a borrowed script, but you, fully, fiercely, finally. The past is not a prison. The future is not a promise. The present is a doorway. Walk through it before the lights fade, before the curtain falls, before the final breath leaves your chest. Live deeply, live truly, because the cost of not doing so is everything.